Peace! Anyone see my mammoth? We are back, Carlo. We are back. Hello, hello, hello. Cool. It is August. Started second month of Q3. So we're a third of the way through Q3 already. And yeah, we're just over a month and a half, just give or take, month and a half out from the London GT. So obviously. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's at the very end of September, so I'd call it 2 months.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. So yeah, no, we're about it'll be about 7 weeks, 8 weeks out from the event. Obviously a lot of other things going on between now and then.
It feels really close.
It does actually, it really does. I was looking at my lists and knowing that you'll hate me forever if I turn up to the London GT. I mean, we already know you hate me forever, but you'll hate me doubly forever if I turn up to the London GT without a painted army. Yeah, I better get on with it.
Yeah.
Can't I just claim that I'm a new player?
No. You've been playing the same goddamn faction for the past 2 years, and you got about 2 painted units. So, there are 0 excuses.
I think you'll find that there are 3 painted units. It's just that one of them never sees the table.
I was about to say, yeah, that's counting your giants does not count because you never play them.
I was gonna say Thens, but okay. But yeah, so I'll get on with that. I'll get that sorted. But yeah, so it's been another week. Did anything happen this week, really, news-wise? I think the answer is no. Right?
No, I really think nothing happened this week.
Like legit, just nothing.
Why nobody's in the chat? There's nobody expects anything.
What's today's?
I'll tell you what I do actually need to say. I need to kick off with talking about last week and what's happened.
Yeah.
Or what hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And what we talked about last week. I have to effectively recant things that I said last week.
Oh yeah.
Because
yeah.
I mean, like lots of people came to me and started, basically asking what the hell I was talking about or why I was so wrong. It seems that I was even more blinded by how beautiful the Thorn Guard are than I actually thought I had been. And I'd been really, really stupid and made an assumption, a crazy, crazy assumption, that crossbow was a long range.
The Watcher crossbow from the Thorn Watch.
Yeah. So
it isn't.
My entire discussion was based around the fact that I thought they were a long-ranged unit. I thought they were a long-ranged combo melee unit. They're not. They're short-ranged. And God, they are bad. Like, if they're 7 points, they are absolutely dead on arrival on that. Yeah, so... And you know what? It made me think, actually. It made me think, basically, no unit should ever be short range in this game, in my opinion, without having quickfire. Like, every single... Like, obviously, some short range units would become incredibly powerful, like Pyromancers. So you have to rebalance their points or their abilities or whatever around that. Every unit with short range should have quickfire. Pyromancers should be maneuvering and then shooting. Slings, trappers with their little spears and their slings should be maneuvering and then shooting. Like, there's no point in things being short range, in my opinion, unless you fire off of a maneuver.
I think the balance would be the spearwives, right? Modern day spearwives is that they have the charging volley style, which makes again a lot more sense. Like Roman legionary Pelham light infantry getting that throw and go kind of like a tactic. I think that can work for short range units as well as alternatives.
Okay. Yeah, and you couldn't have quick fire or whatever. No. Yeah, and charging volley. Like, otherwise you could maneuver, shoot, charge. Like, that would be too much. that's the other option. You must be able to be basically a dedicated combat unit that has this shot as they charge, or you have to be able to maneuver to shoot. Like it has to be one of the two. Otherwise, your action efficiency is just so low. You have to take one more maneuver than everybody else to get into position to shoot. So you shoot half as much, like, and you're just half as powerful as anything with long range.
Yeah. The only thing that works, and again going back to like the trapper argument, is that because free folk, specifically free folk, tend to have higher activations than a lot of their opponents, but even then that's not really true anymore. With 8 and 9 being like what we see as the competitive side of free folk, which is kind of what's being posted by other factions anyway. But the 8 and 9 style lists, if they're fighting into those 7-8 style lists, they can afford to be less action efficient with the trappers because they have that action to like burn time, if you will, or they've got activation advantage. But I do agree, you end up.
I mean, they're also a 4-point unit and
exactly.
bring a trap effect. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
So that's they're like a 3-point unit. So
yeah, it's understandable, but like there are other stuff. I mean, the modern day, the modern Kranags with the traps that they've got, everything else they've got, I'm just like, these guys aren't good.
No. So yeah, anyway, there we go. Massive recant on what I said last week about Thornwatch, God, whatever they're called, Thornwatch being good.
Is it
beyond being nice models, being anything other than nice models?
Just purge them from your memory.
Yeah.
Just saying that Rossi saying I started playing Night's Watch's score shows. Ironically, it's player profiles are back. There's a piece of news which people may not be aware of. Not true. Night's Watch, if you go back in my results history, Night's Watch losses. Free Folk wins. See, I'm actually a shite player. No.
Shite Night's Watch player.
Shite Night's Watch player, yeah. As it turns out.
That's for sure.
Which must have been bad if they're the best faction, right? So yeah, don't play Night's Watch, play other factions. It's the best way to get your rating up faster. And on that note, it's been a long time, but we'll cover it while we're here as well. A quick remembrance. Playing more games doesn't make you have a higher rating per se. Of course, playing more games will mean that you have more chances to win and thus earn points, thus have a higher rating. But it's actually what's more important is the quality and the number of wins you have versus your losses. It's about sustaining high, consistent win rates over nearly any period of time. That's what's going to net you high results on ELO, playing worse factions. A lot of people have been talking about it. Oh, just play more games, you'll get a higher ELO.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
I mean,
I get the idea.
That's the kind of shit systems that companies such as Simon will implement because they only want you to play more games, right?
Yeah.
They don't actually care about measuring you as a player. They care about simply making you want to play the game more and want to turn up to more tournaments. So they build systems like that. This system isn't built entirely not like that at all.
Yeah.
There is no inherent benefit to playing more than other people.
No, not really. You'll find that you win.
Don't say not really, Mickey. None. There is none.
No.
Zero.
No.
Zero.
Well, the reason I say not really is if someone plays 0 games, like they're going to be average rating. If you play like 50 games, you're just assuming that you win more than you lose. You're going to have a rating higher than that. So there is some benefit. Otherwise, what we're saying is people don't play games, guys. Which is you want to win games. That's what you want to do.
I mean, like you have to play an amount of games to be able to achieve a given rating. Like, there's a limit to how much you can get earned from each game. Even if you win 100% of your games, if you've only ever played 5 games, you won't be top of the rating.
Yeah.
Even if you've got 100% crushing victories with the lowest rated faction in the game versus the highest rated faction in the game, you're still not the world's number 1 rated player because it takes more results than that. Yeah. But
but on that
you're
note,
not more likely to be high rated because you played 50 games instead of 5.
No, that's true. there's threshold levels, isn't there? Like you can't achieve 1800 rating with only playing 5 games, but if you'd have played 10 games, it's fully possible you could get to
You can.
1800. But yeah,
Yeah.
50 games definitely. And if you're not. But on that note, obviously talk about Larks very quickly. Currently holding his own at the top there, but you can see Larks' like point gain. Like he's gone through periods where he's not played games, sure, and even then, like a 20-point gain over 2 games, it's becoming hard for Larks to gain points. And then he plays 1 game and he loses a significant proportion. He loses more points than he earned in the last 2 games he played. This is the beauty of that ELO system we've just talked about. Yeah.
Yep. Even though he's playing with Barras.
Yeah. If he's that much
Which,
higher than everyone else,
hard work.
a loss is actually worse for him than 2 or 3 wins.
I mean, and Larks is the number 1 rated player because he plays with everything. Like if you look at the things that he's playing with, things that he's winning with, he outperforms the average expected result of every faction that he plays with. If you just go down on the left, you'll be able to see he posts high win rate.
Disappointed.
High win rate has almost everything except Targaryen. Guess he's got 1 game, 1 loss. There we go. One loss with Targaryens. Not outperforming the Targaryen average. I mean, but even a 50% Stark win rate outperforms the Stark average.
Yeah. Just point out, still hasn't played neutrals yet, so he's not a real Chad. That's a challenge for him.
Yeah.
Go and win consistently with neutrals, Larks. You become a hero. Interesting to see his free folk that his most.
Mm-hmm. I think it's because he plays Psychopath quite a bit, and Psychopath
doesn't play free folk at the moment.
He definitely has. I've had a look at his profile. He plays a lot of Greyjoys, but he also plays free folk now and again.
Fair enough. I'll have to check. I have to challenge to a game if he's playing. No free folk.
Oh
no
wow!
Free folks. Greyjoys and Lannisters only.
Yep.
There you go. Wow, that's savage. Anyway, right. So I just thought we'd talk about that while we're here. The power rankings are they are looking fairly consistent, right? They've not really changed.
Big Targ rise.
Yes, and specifically a free folk kind of like shifting with Lannisters. Partially would have been helped by the game that we played, Carlo, which was a bit of a blowout.
That's a gain to say that.
Well, one impact.
I mean, like a single game changes by like single digits.
Yeah.
I mean, plus minus 1 point, right? So gain to say that would have been helped by our result. I mean,
no, it's
one of many. If you look back into the Lannister history, it was a consistent 20-30 losses by 20 different people that created that fall, right?
Oh yeah, but I'm saying we're part of it. I didn't say it was entirely.
Yeah. No.
It's part of it. And if you look, but it is really interesting, and this is the thing, is it is a lot of losses, not over a period, not over like a period of time. It is a lot of losses, literally over 2 days. 2 days, the 29th, 31st. Lannisters lost best part of 30 points over 2 days, which is actually insane. That kind of like
but
huge
just
drop.
Again, to like almost like go back to that idea of like how many games you have to play and like blah blah, like playing more games means whatever. People believe that like individual people can have an effect upon a faction's ranking, and it's not true. For a start, like individual people, nobody has that much effect on a faction themselves, and more importantly, it will always rebalance at whatever their real value is. So even if one person is consistently like pushing a faction high, but everybody else isn't performing that well with them, they'll always get dragged back down. They'll always get the system resettles at its correct point very quickly and very consistently. So this idea that individuals are affecting the rankings in any major way is actually really false in all but possibly neutrals, because so few people play neutrals that you can actually count the people who playing them and see that they are effectively propping up or causing the downfall of the faction.
Tom Tyler for a while
is about the only case.
Tom Tyler for a while literally had 50% of games recorded for neutrals. right? One player. Now, okay, one player won't normally have that big an effect, but if it's 50% of the games, yeah, they're gonna have an effect. There's no escaping that. But yeah, so this is the thing though, like one individual game doesn't matter, but it is really interesting to see Lannisters went on like they they opened the parachute and it wasn't there, and they tumbled into freefall for two days. It's not recovering at the
Yeah.
moment. There's
Yeah.
been less games played over the last couple of days because it's not the weekend, but it's still not great.
And Weasel's, Weasel's right. Once we get as granular as commanders,
Yes.
you can count that like there's a certain people playing commanders, and a commander can be propped up. A commander's rating can be heavily influenced by the people who choose to play them and whether or not they're the best or the worst of the spread of players playing in that faction, doing the best or doing the worst. So that is true.
Mm-hmm.
So once we get to commander level, that can be true. When we conglomerate all the results into factions, all but neutrals, like it's great to be a part of it. It's great that you are part of your faction's future, its outcome, it's everything. But you are not the reason why they're high rated, and you're not the reason why they're low rated.
No. What's interesting about Lannister here is it's the only faction that we've really got that is not. It really isn't finding a sustainable sweet spot. It's so cyclical.
No.
Like
Yeah.
it's variances happen. We all understand here that variance will happen. You can't sustain an exact rating for a long period of time. Playing one game will immediately devalue that. But the point is that you cycle around a given value or in a data range. What we can see here is that the data range is wildly. It's up at 50, which, okay, it's not quite Night's Watch levels, but that's comparable with Targs right now, right? Then it's dropping to nearly like minus. We're looking at, if this trend continues, we're looking at maybe stopping minus 20. It might get as low as.
Yeah.
Minus 15, minus 16 at the moment.
What's always been super, super interesting about Lannisters, you don't have the graph there. No need to bring it up. It'll take so long to load. There's a graph which shows all factions in weaving in and out of each other across all time. All of those graphs plotted together. Lannisters have always, it seems, been entirely intertwined and mirrored the success and failure of Targaryens.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Every time the Lannisters have risen, it's been at the expense of Targaryens, and every time Lannisters have dropped, the Targaryens have dived back up. It seems to me that that is the deciding factor of whether or not Targs are high rated right now, or Lannisters. So see here, do you know what I mean?
Preloaded
So that massive climb in Targaryens is mirrored by a massive drop in Lannies. But if we go back, what is basically a month, you see the huge dip in Targaryens, which mirrors a huge rise in Lannisters. It seems that only one of them can be good at any one time. The other factions, they're weaving in and out. Obviously they're all affecting each other, they're all impacting each other, but they seem to be so intertwined. Whenever one goes up, the other goes down. So I think that if Targs start to fall, we'll see Lannisters recover. And it is, and people are saying, it could be to do with the errata. Interestingly, some people did look at some of those results. Lots and lots of those losses didn't run Red Cloaks, whether or not that's perceived around the errata. Basically saying now that it is only one action when you charge. There is only one test off of the back of that. Whether or not that really has nerfed the unit, people perceive that to be a nerf, or people are just searching for another viable unit in case they need to because of the nerf.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, I played a game without them, not at all to do with that, but that was just, that I was just trying out a list. It didn't go well.
Yeah, I mean, that was the one.
I tried to make Mountains Men work 2 times out of 2, and not so strong.
that was the game of Dan versus Carlo that I was recording, and I know we don't like anecdotal data here, but it really was like you replace that 6-point unit with literally any other Lannister 6-point unit, and it
Yeah.
categorically would have performed better.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
that was the thing. Like the one thing it did was it killed a wolf when it flank charged it, and I'm sorry, it was like a wolf on two wounds as well or something. I'm like,
Yeah.
most 5-point units can do that, never mind a 6-point unit. I mean, poor fellows could
Yeah.
probably do that.
And the thing is that like their design really allows for that, obviously, because you always have more ranks than the wolf. That's like you suddenly get your bonuses. You've got +1 to hit, vicious, and stuff like that. But it's like anything can kill that. There's no need for those bonuses in that case. And it's like, hey, I'm going to charge this unit with like 1 rank left. Oh, look at all these bonuses I get. It's like, great, you're going to kill it anyway. It's got 1 rank. Like, so there is the small bit like basically the thing in the back of my mind was thinking like, can this get through this hardened spam? Like, is this going to stop this point where you like get stuck at 1 rank and then you just can't get through it? But yeah,
Yeah,
it's it's just
bartender.
anecdotal evidence.
It is, but when you've got data to bring it up, data obviously impacts the overall things. The anecdotal evidence is like, well, here's how you set this up to make it work, and that anecdote is actually rare, and that's where you use the anecdotal evidence to support the overall data trends. Bartender makes a very good point. Starks and Lannisters seem to mirror,
Yeah.
which, if
Yeah.
you think about it, from 1.6. And one of the things that was always hugely recorded on the site, I don't know if it's true anymore.
It was back then. It was the most common game by a significant margin.
Yeah.
Starks versus Lannisters.
So obviously that would to say that gate matchup has an impact is fairly fair back then
Yeah.
because they simply played them a lot.
You'll be able to see the number of games.
Starks, it's no different to Baratheon.
Yeah. Starks just aren't popular as they used to be.
It's actually
Basically,
it's not far away from Targaryens as well. It's definitely probably the most. I think it is the most played matchup, but not significantly.
Yeah.
Baratheons is right behind it, and Targaryens are not far off that either. Interestingly, Greyjoys aren't massively far behind that either as well.
Just to go
nice
a bit back to answer Wap's question.
Yeah.
He says, Wap is a dedicated Lannister player and a high-rated one at that. He says, if I lose 2 to 3 games against Baratheon in a day, while Lannies that are +30, we're going to see a significant shift temporarily. Depends what we're talking about. Significant. If you want to know how much of an effect in the short term, because like I say, things as soon as somebody else starts submitting results, then you can't work out what your effect anymore upon the faction is. But your short term, very, very short term effect on the faction is a 10th of whatever it had on your own personal rating. So if you drop 100 ranking in a day, you've had a -10 on that faction in the immediate term. But literally, as soon as people start submitting more results, your -10 is diluted, and you don't have that because that -10 is now accounted for from then on.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where we talk about like one game has an impact. One game has an impact if you're talking about like 2 to 3 rating points per faction, which in the grand scheme of things is very little. These average results talking about here, but it depends if you think that.
Hundreds of results.
Yeah, it depends if
they
you think 2 or 3 rating points is significant in the overall data. Me and Carlo would say no, it's not. 3 rating points is literally a game for us. We don't think of it as number of points. Actually, we think of it as number of games, and it's just like literally that's one game that could be recovered in one game. Simple as that. And that's why rating people talk about like, oh, ratings are high, ratings are low. We're just like, well, getting to 1600, that's like basically all you have to do is win 3 or 4 games.
Yeah.
From 1500. That is it. Like, as difficult as that sounds, or not, that's a very simple way to kind of analyze it and look at it. But anyway, yeah, just lots of interesting things going on. Certainly, the meteoric fall of Lannister is bloody impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, it came. I think it'll recover. I do. I do think that they're a good faction. I think that, I believe that the factions are right. I believe that Night's Watch are further ahead of Targaryens than they currently are. I mean,
Mhm.
for the vast majority of their time, they've been significantly ahead of them. I believe that Night's Watch are out ahead. I believe that they're number one faction. They always have been, and I believe that they will continue to be. I believe that Targaryens are, without a doubt, the number two faction. They are a step off the Night's Watch pace.
Mhm.
And then I believe that Free Folk, Greyjoy, and Lannisters are all playing at the same level, right? I believe that they're all basically the same. Myself, that's my own personal opinion of those three factions. Stark, I believe, can compete with them only with very specific builds. I think that they are the most complex list building problem right now in the game. They have like good lists, but they're really like they're very, very specific builds. And you really can't just put whatever you feel like on the table.
Mhm.
And then neutrals and Baratheons, they're just last place, like without a doubt. Like they're practically the same faction for a start because the majority of points that people put on the actual table with most good Baratheon lists are neutral units. Like they are the same faction, if neutrals can even be called a faction. If
What's actually really interesting is the complete and utter lack. I mean, people still play the Bolton stuff, generally speaking. There's a complete and utter lack of Zorse Riders, Bloody Mummers, like that whole side of it. Stormcrows see play, but there's a lack of dervishes in general. You just don't see dervishes in lists anymore, which is really interesting that you like all these 6 and 7 point units that were fringe players and like actually like half decent units we saw from either the visions or in the previous meta have just moved into this kind of like obscurity of we just don't see them. Um, like Zorse Riders and Skirmishers really were hammered into the
yeah,
dust before release from the Visions.
yeah,
And Dervishes were fine in 1.6. Like they had some problems and some interactions that weren't particularly fun, but they were a decent unit. People ran them. You don't see them
yeah.
at all anymore. Just don't see them.
No, they were again a like basically their issues were not their own issues. The
Yeah.
problems with them were again a symptom of problems with other things, right? So Preston Grenfield, Tyrion
Yeah.
dervishes were a joke, right? The reactivation combination of that was unbelievable.
Hmm.
But that's not Dervish's problem. That's
Preston.
Tyrion and
Tyrion.
Preston's problem.
Yeah.
They were also a bit of a joke in Starks, but that again was because of the Stark movement mechanics and the Stark deck, right? It
Hmm.
wasn't a Dervisher problem. And so again, they're like assigning blame without understanding the underlying cause.
Yeah.
And over nerfing things is like it's why it hurts so much. I'm so annoyed that they over nerfed Lannister crossbowmen. Yes, Tyrion with Preston Grenfield Lannister crossbows was a fucking nightmare, right? But that's Tyrion and Preston's problem, not crossbows. Crossbows are nothing to do with that. So why have you made them so shit?
Oh god, yeah, and they are. They're terrible.
Yeah.
They're just terrible. Um,
They are the same unit as a 4-point unit of Greyjoy archers.
minus Sundering, technically,
Yeah. But they re-roll to hit in the flank, and they give out Sundering, and they give out pillage tokens that they buff their friends. Like,
and
what the
there's a
hell?
and if you think about it in terms of like synergy, there's a Greyjoy card you can play on them to get a vulnerable token when they attack. So I mean, like
Yeah,
basically Sundering equivalent, like
yeah.
so. Yeah. Anyway, we are going to have a quick look at because Charles requested it. Look at the power rankings there of units. He wants to look at free folk. Rusty Glass says, how many games do you think have to be reported before the swings aren't so drastic after a 2 or 3 game skid? I'm guessing it means like if you've gone on like a loss rate of like 2 or 3 games,
And,
1 game.
um, so just okay. So just I don't quite know what the question is, but
Neither
there's a
do I.
definite misunderstanding because the rise and fall of personal and faction and commander ELO does not go down as submissions go up. So 3 games will always have the same impact, no matter how many games have gone in the past. It doesn't become smaller and smaller as games go on. That is important and required because it means that ELO can always very quickly react to changes in the game. If you were going to like make it worth less and less and less and less as more results came in, you're effectively just looking at win rate, right? And so ELO is very much concerned with most recent data. If you have a very significant trend, if things are considered too unstable, and if say we started getting 10 times as many submissions every week, I would reduce the size of the movement for each individual game, but that's based on like how many we get per week in a set of time and not how many submissions you've had total ever. It's not like in 2 months time when we have 2,000 results instead of 1,000 results. Each result will mean less. No, it still means just as much.
The site, to put it bluntly, it measures win rate, but only win rate recently. It basically all of the old data establishes where it should be, and then it goes, is your win rate going up or down from what it used to be? So it's almost like a rate of change of win rate, if you think of it like that. Which is why it
Night's
responds
Watch
much
have
faster.
become very steady around plus 70, plus 80. That's not because new results are worth less. That's just because they always keep performing at the same level, which is above the level everybody else.
Which ironically means that each game is actually worth less ELO in the changes.
And you'll see, and you'll see the factions that are being most volatile are the ones that are in the middle around that 0, because the system never knows like where to put them. Like every result, it's like okay, you're about a 0. I don't know which way this is going to go, and like bang, it's a big plus, a big minus, big plus, a big minus. Whereas like with the Night's Watch, every single game, it's like you're supposed to win, you're supposed to win, you're supposed to win, steady, 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 big drop, but like they're so consistently just like winning 4 out of 5 games that they just stay there.
So on to units and things. Tycho is now the third most highest rated component in the game, and as something that can only appear in lists once, like conscripts, watch captains, even crossbowmen, poor fellows, all of these things will have their ranking kind of artificially increased a little bit, because the way we do the unit rankings is based off like how many of them appear in a list will actually mean if there's 3 of them in a list, for example, each one will gain the unit ELO when it wins. So units that appear a lot in lists and get wins will tend to get higher ratings faster. Hence conscripts. Conscripts won't
that's
stop
because they're such a large component of the list, right? They are appearing multiple times and leading to a win. That means that they're having a really big impact on the game. And that's what this list is trying to measure. What is the most impactful thing on the game, positively and negatively, from top to bottom? And nothing is having more impact, according to the site, than conscripts. I don't think that many people who know anything about tournaments and Night's Watch would disagree with that. Whether or not it's watch captains or conscripts, well, you can,
the two are synonymous.
The site says that it's both. It doesn't matter. Like they're both plus 140. Like they're huge. Tycho is crazy high though. Also, when you specifically think that's his value in every faction combined. Like, so even the factions that are losing,
Baratheon,
Tycho is the common theme that makes them win. So if you're thinking about what 4-point NZU to put in Tycho. I mean, like Peter Baelish is coming in at 6 as well, but like he's about half as good at a plus 80 than Tycho is at a plus 134.
It's actually insane. Like that an NCU has made it as high as that is, specifically because it's an NCU that appears in multiple factions, right? It has the possibility to rise higher because it has appearances in multiple factions, actually. But it should only be gaining a small amount of rating relative to conscripts that appear 3 or 4 times in a list. You know, it literally is gaining as about a third or a quarter of many points for each game, which makes its rise to an equivalent rating even more impressive. It's actually insane. You know, to give example, Jaw, who people have said is a massive issue, 77. You know, Illyrio just above that at 80. Like, these guys are appearing once in lists with factions that do very well in the meta, and are still nowhere near the 140 that Tycho's nearly posting.
Yeah.
Wow.
You want to win more? Play Tycho.
Which
he is absolutely a answer. It's crazy that he didn't change. That's what's so crazy. He
yeah.
actually didn't change. He's like the only thing in the entire game who didn't change.
Whoa.
He is absolutely okay. Go on. What?
Technically, if you ignore the points difference cost, Pycelle didn't change. You're
Okay,
salty.
that he went up by 33%. Like, of course he changed.
I know.
He is absolutely an answer to the current style of the game, the lists that are dominating, the way lists are played right now. The ability to one-shot units effectively went away, which now means that what people are looking for is a very reliable way to two-shot a unit. And that means that anything that can step in between that attempted two-shot and say, oh no, I'm not going to die here, is now massively important. Whereas in the past, it didn't used to matter. You'd be like, oh, I can heal 5 wounds as soon as I get hit. And it's just like, your opponent just comes in and goes, well, you're dead. So heal 5 of nothing then. Whereas these days, they're going to do like 7 wounds and then 5 wounds. And you just step in and go, okay, I'm actually back on full ranks. So, you know, good luck killing that. And it becomes a real grind. Is it better for the game or worse? That's a totally different discussion. But Tycho is the answer to make you be able to stop most highly skilled crafted lists.
Definitely agree. 100%. Yeah, I mean, there's some other stuff on there as well that's looking good. I mean, Free Folk Raiders getting up there, but again, that's because you see people running ridiculous number of Free Folk Raiders. I think skin changes being up that high is ridiculous. I have no idea
I
why
mean,
skin
plus
changes are
50
that
is not
high.
a joke.
No,
That's high.
I have literally no idea why they're that high. Because
they've almost never lost.
in which case I ask, why are they winning games? I think it's a terrible use of 2 points.
Well, they got +2 morale. Morale is known to be a massive issue right now for the game.
True.
Morale skew is the way that most things go.
Yeah, raiders at maybe you just like 5-point raiders at 3 morale and just hope that you can do damage with bears in combat. Maybe. But yeah. Anyway, let's see what's going really badly though. I want to see what's going really badly. This is actually the main reason I loaded this up.
Yes, I think Wardens have recovered a tiny bit, right? I think
they have.
bottom is it Champions of the Stag?
No, it's Clegane's Mountains Men.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh God.
Funny that. Maybe I shouldn't have tried to make them work. Maybe I should have looked at my own set of rankings before I tried to use a unit.
They are abysmal.
Yeah.
This goes back to what this conversation we were having before, though, right? Internal balance inside Lannisters is, I'm going to put it bluntly here, fucked. Like,
it's shite.
It's something up with Lannister internal balance. It just doesn't work. Yeah. And the funny thing
I'm not saying the faction doesn't work. Faction is fine.
Yeah.
The faction can even be top tier. You know, like not Night's Watch top tier. The faction can win a tournament if you're a very good player, particularly if you're the best player at the tournament. You know, like I do think that if the best player or a player equal skill with you brings Night's Watch, you're not going to win. But it has some very specific answers to some of the things in the meta. It can give a game to almost anything. It can compete. But internally, when you look at one unit by comparison to the other, its field of units that it can select is tiny, and it just spams them. And we'll might come onto it into a bit. People are running these Highlander events where you have one version, you're only allowed one version of everything. I think that is incredibly painful to Lannisters because all Lannisters can do right now is spam the same units over and over again because they can compete when they use certain units and they just lose when they use Mountains Men.
Yep.
Guardsmen.
Hey, Stormcrow Archers are up there because basically Stormcrow Archers are run in Baratheons and only Baratheons, really.
Yeah.
And neutrals. And the only person the only faction that was propping them up slightly before was Lannisters, and now Lannisters have come down. Go figure. Yeah, no, it's a sad day.
I actually really like. I mean, like I was just saying that, like hey, look, I made a thing and I like it. But I think that the unit rankings are really, really good. Like, I think very few people can argue with the things that are at the top and at the bottom. I think they're giving a really good, interesting look at like the impact certain units are having on the game, particularly certain NCUs. And I'm really glad that like there's a whole mix. It's not just like bang, Baratheons are at the bottom. There are some really interesting things that you can look at. You can look at what is doing well in Baratheons and what's doing badly in Baratheons. You can look at what's doing well in Lannisters and what's doing badly in Lannisters. And that they've all got this mix of everything in amongst each other really shows that it's sorting out not just like what factions are winning, but what units are causing wins. What the root cause of a faction's power is and what a root cause of a faction's problems are. And I think that is really actually well highlighted. That I think everybody's very, very confident that the root cause of Night's Watch power comes from conscripts, crossbowmen, watch captain. That Tycho is a huge issue. That what props up Lannisters is the poor fellows. And that there are things in Starks, for example, like the Mormont veteran and stuff like that can perform very, very well, that are quite high up the ratings. And if you can start to understand why these things are doing well and what like a good list with these things looks like, then you can really outperform the average for your faction. And that's that's what the site's about. Remember, it's about trying to take your faction that you like and push it to be better.
It's interesting to see savage moment for Baratheons there. That Courtney's your best NCU, but all faithfully your best unit. Savage.
Yeah, that's a problem. I think that really right now the biggest thing at the fore of Baratheon's problem is their loyalty mechanic, and they just can't seem to get anything to work in isolation across each side.
What is interesting though is that Rose Knights are the highest rated Renly side unit, not massively high at just 17 points, just languishing in the fairly middle of the pack. But I just wanted to point that out to Carlo because Carlo was like, "Stop making Rose Knights work, or trying to make them work." And actually, they kind of are working for Baratheons.
Yes, Weasel, you're right. Stag Knights are at the bottom of the rankings, and Rose Knights are in the middle of the rankings. Maybe they do work, but
it's only because we're having this conversation like 10 minutes
change. Again, it's one of those things that I'm. It's one of those things that I'm caught up on and kind of like annoyed about because Rose Knights weren't too good before.
Not really.
But they nerfed them. Like
the problem.
It's possible. It's possible that the changes to the way the game was going to play out might have pushed them into being like really offensive.
I think
to the game.
I think the major issue is that Rose Knights were. It's not that they were too good, it's that they were too one-dimensional. And to the point where, like, we saw when they released, like, people had legitimately no way and had no understanding of how to beat them. And it was like, Rose Knights, I mean, even up until the end of 1.6, people were like, what the hell do I do against Rose Knights? Rose Knights are impossible.
Yeah.
But then obviously people who go, oh yeah, but you just do this, 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 and this, and it's all of a sudden that unit becomes a liability. That very polarizing effect that it has on the game is just bad. It's just bad for the game. It doesn't actually matter how good or bad the unit is. It's bad for game health that it's that polarizing.
Yeah.
Irony? There's a lot of polarizing stuff in the game right now.
Yeah. I tell you what the new Rose Knights are. The new Rose Knights, or what old Rose Knights were, is now what hardened is, right? Hardened, and particularly like maybe like Stark hardened, or even Night's Watch hardened with shields that guard. They're very specifically the new equivalent to Rose Knights, which is like, can I deal with this? And if not, then it's just going to ruin the game. And like that is true of old Rose Knights. Like if you couldn't deal with them, they would ruin your game. But the thing is like most people could deal with them if they knew how. Hardened, I'm not even sure most people can deal with hardened though. That's it's tough. It's a very difficult situation.
Called morale, fortunately. Dem Lannisters. Get a panic bomb on them.
Yeah,
Or other
you still
factions.
you gotta push through one. You gotta push through one hit.
Mate, just take
one wound.
Talking about, mate, take the crown zone. And then give them hear me roar whatever on the crown zones. Oh, that's pretty sad, isn't it?
Why. Honestly, the reason why I think that Red Cloaks will always have a place for Lannisters is because
generating a -3 panic.
Sometimes you just need to force through a panic check without having done damage. Like there are some things that are so entirely immune to an attack that you have to be able to force through a panic check by a different mean. So yeah.
Right then. Okay, we'll stop looking at all that though. It's a bit of a deviation from where we wanted to go, but it is interesting nonetheless because I think me and Carlo haven't really talked about all of that impact and how it all works and where it's all standing in a while. And there are little things that we pick up when we do this. We pick up little things. It's like, I'm going to try that out. I've certainly got some stuff I'm going to be taking away from today. And Carlo's never going to be trying Mountains Men ever again.
Maybe Weasel's right. Maybe I should reconsider Spread Fear.
Yeah.
Lannisters don't have a lot of spare points though.
They don't. But on the plus side,
why spread fear when you can have Warcry for the same price?
I mean, you just spread fear by turning up to a tournament, right? So I mean, right. We're gonna look at tournaments. Now. Just close all these extra tabs. And there is obviously one tournament that we have to talk about. It is NRG number 2. It's not over. The first round isn't just over yet. We've had a couple of extensions. It was completely reasonable. We started it before time anyway. And good news, the 2 games that we're waiting on to go ahead are being played as we speak. Literally, if I open up Discord, I can see Ben playing against Francesco, Duckers, Mizitude, Drogue. I think it's what is he known as? Ben. Yeah, Ben Ducker Kuranos on the site. Yeah. Versus Francesco, who we've not spoken to in a while. Used to be really common around here. Used to be common. I think he's had a busy time. And we see Brett versus. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation again. Saimaj.
I think it's Shaimai.
Right. We've got Shaimai versus Brett happening as we speak right now as well. So once those games are over, we'll be able to end in the first round, which will probably be in, I want to say, 2 hours from now. They've been playing for about an hour, so it's about 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours from now. We'll move on to round 2. This does mean, however, the one other game that's been unplayed is Dakota versus Winston Lee, Euron Greyjoy. Unfortunately, a member of Euron's, Winston's family has come down with COVID, and as a result, he's had to take a huge amount of time out to look after that individual. So he will be retired from the event, which is a massive shame, obviously, and obviously all the best to him and his family. Hopefully, speedy recovery. So, in fact, I'll do that. What's a 100% chance it breaks, right? No, there we go. So he's retired now from the event. If he returns, he might be out returning later rounds. We'll see. There might be opportunity for. I will have a talk with the various players. If anyone does want to take that spot, I know Decipher might be quite keen as well. Yes, the chance of you actually winning the event, the chances of you winning any of the prizes are simply unlikely because you've got one game less than everyone else. Not actually impossible, That's the funny thing.
You know,
You can't win the event, but actually, because there's so many other prizes, it doesn't really matter. So it's not impossible that you can win something, but I will talk with those players and offers a decipher first. I'll offer it to and then go through. But if anyone else does want to join that event, let me know. No point just leaving people on the waiting list not playing, and it means that one less game happens every week, which sucks for somebody.
yeah.
So that's NRG. We will have a quick look at the top. We've got quite a few players who took crushing wins. In fact, when I say quite a few, I believe it's only 3 games of the 16. 16 take away at 3, so technically 13. Only 3 games of the 13 played weren't crushing.
Yeah.
We talked about this during the week, didn't we, Carlo? About how crushing wins are just the standard now.
Yeah.
And they always have been, but
The standard outcome.
yeah.
It's an outlier for it to not be a crushing win, which is a real problem for tournaments specifically, because it effectively means that you have to have enough rounds that only one person is unbeaten, because you cannot separate people by secondary points, because every single tournament, really, you'll end up with multiple people, maximum tournament points and maximum secondary points. And if you don't have maximum secondary points, then it's probably because you got an incredibly unlucky matchup,
Or
not because you're worse than the person who also who has maximum points.
So I'm of the opinion the ones where you end up with like 3 players who go without a loss into the final round. There's going to be
Yeah.
2 of those people that match up, and then one of those is going to be matched up against somebody else who's got a loss. And I'm not going to
Yeah.
say that person matched up against the person with a loss is in a better position to win. That's strictly speaking not necessarily true, but generally speaking, that's probably true because this other
That
player's
they
lost a game.
leapfrog. They
Yeah,
leapfrog both of the people on the top table. They leapfrog the top 2 players because those top 2 players then have a really close game against each other.
yeah.
And end up, though, even the winner has not maximum secondary points.
Which, like, there's nothing you can do about that, and that, ultimately it still comes down to performance on the day and games and things like that. Like, I'm not saying that's, oh my god, game's broken, but
No.
you've got to feel for the players who were there in that situation, right? That they were on the top table playing for the win, and they had a fantastically brilliant game from a competitive standpoint, and then they saw table 2 someone just get absolutely wiped off the face of the earth because they were playing like some experienced guy into someone who's maybe he's not that experienced, maybe he's picked up a loss along the way, but have a slightly more difficult route, whatever. And
that just is Swiss draw.
yes,
Well, if you can't get to a single undefeated player,
yep,
versus the other kind of method that it can be done by, and specifically, Simon pick Swiss draw to be their tournament system. The other method is strength of schedule, where the person on the top table would be benefited by strength of schedule, because what it looks at isn't the size of the win that you had. It looks at the strength of the opponents that you beat and where they finished in the table. But that also can have problems, whereas, effectively, if you just happen to be paired up against like a weak player play at round 1, a weak player round 2, you crush them both times, you do absolutely everything you can still lose because they end up down the bottom of the table.
yep, 100%.
But,
Yeah.
technically, you are probably second best. Yes, you didn't have any chance to be number 1, but if your opponent had to beat harder players on the way to becoming undefeated, then, well, they had a better tournament than you. They did better than you. So the problem is that Simon and Swiss Draw specifically say that what we're going to measure by and split draws by is the margin of victory. But the problem is that our current margin of victory is skewed hugely towards crushing win. So you can't separate people very regularly by whether or not it was a crushing or not, because so many of them are crushing.
Well, it's actually more interesting, and I was talking about it with a couple of players over the week. We're talking about time limits and how games go to time more often now. And I disagree that the game is decided on time, but games do go to time. So here's a big one I think that people didn't recognize from 1.6. It's only physical tournaments, right? A lot of physical tournament games go to time. That didn't mean they were decided by going to time. There's a significant difference there. It's very hard to play 6 rounds in 2 hours or an hour and a half.
The time caps the result at being, say, a standard, rather than it going to crushing, right? Is what you're saying. Like, that person was always going to win, but the size, the magnitude of the win they achieve is limited by the time that they have. When I played in Sterling, I had a very, very close first round match actually against a Stark player. And we'd played relatively slow. You know, it was his first game in a while. And I didn't want to rush him. I also, got a bit unlucky in a certain couple of cases. And like end of round 3, we were drawing. Going into round 4, which was possibly our last round on time, I pulled ahead by a minor. I was like 1 point ahead. And then everybody else was still playing. And I asked him, like, are we happy to play another round? Like, we'll need to be a bit faster. You know, it wasn't like the TO was like, this is your last round. You got to call it here. We looked at the clock. We'd kind of played round 4 like we thought it was going to be the last round, but it all happened quite quickly. And so we went to round 5, and that was the last round, and it ended up as a standard win, right? Like, I won by 3 points by that time. So the time would have capped us and me at a 1 point win, but it actually resulted in a 3 point win. Because we had that one extra round. And that's the kind of thing that I think happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Games, once you start to get ahead, will quickly snowball into crushing, but the time can often step in at the point at which one person's just got ahead. Before they manage to turn that into a massive snowball crushing win. The way this game works, very, very rarely does a person come back from being behind. And so for a game to finish early, it's so rare that that person who's currently behind would have been able to turn that into a win. Just because that's not the way the game really gets played at tournaments. That's not the way it gets played at a high level. The person who gets ahead stays ahead, and more importantly, just extends that lead as the game goes on.
It also has a lot to say about like people saying, oh, it's decided by time and things like that, or it's crushing, or games go long. The simple fact is, tournament games typically don't go to round 5. Like, they rarely will you see a round 6. Just not that likely in a tournament game. Which certainly physical tournament here. Which brings me on to a very interesting discussion. Stag nights. Most games are over by round 3 or round 4. In fact, me and Carlo have talked about this at some length, and have I said to you at the start of Tourney rounds, I said I think games are going to speed up, and there was a worry, and I said the opposite might happen. Games might always be slow, but I think games have become slower to the point where scoring has been increased because the slow of units dying has gone down. So what people look to do is score as many points as they can from objectives and things, meaning games have actually effectively speeded up, even though the game's state doesn't change as quick. It seems really weird, right? But it means something like Stag Nights, Elden. You never make it to round 5, round 6. Literally, those things that you want for those abilities and things from a tournament perspective, they ain't happening.
Yeah.
On the tabletop, it's just not going to happen.
Some people in the chat actually, like Weasel, I do think that actually, I will agree with that. The one thing that time is going to stop is the strategy of just tabling your opponent, right? So time will mean that if one person is playing for objectives and one person is playing for tabling, it massively favors the person playing for objectives.
Yes.
If you can make that finish. And that stopping Night's Watch from tabling people without playing the game mode, I say, well, whatever, that's
good.
Fine.
Yeah.
I say good. Like, if you're turning up and you're not playing the game mode and you're just looking to table people, no matter what the mode is, then I'm not going to cry over that result not having enough time to finish itself. Is it entirely fair? No, not really. But like by comparison to all the things of people banning Night's Watch, do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just like a nuance of the way that they're trying to play the game, having just a small self-limiting factor just on time, is I'm not going to worry about that. But you're right. The only way that people get back into a game is when they've not cared about the score and they've played entirely from the start to table their opponent. And there are times where one person is up on VPs and then gets tabled in round 5 or round 6.
IRL events though, we'll see. If anyone can do it, if anyone can table factions quickly, it's Night's Watch.
Yeah.
So, if we see it, and I think as much as we would not like to admit it, there are a lot of games which players end up basically tabling their opponent or close to tabling. You can see here, there's 5 games here where they're scoring over 20 points of UDs, which I mean, those 26 and 25 and 24, that's likely we're seeing tablings or bloody close to it.
Yeah.
But what's your take on chess clocks in a Song of Ice and Fire tournaments? I am against chess clocks, but I would love to use them. Problem is they don't work for a Song of Ice and Fire because of the way that interactions work. That's actually the issue. It's not that the game, it's not that the players I don't think want to use them. It's purely a thing of whose time are we using when I'm doing countercharge and resolving that on your turn. Whose turn is it when you're rolling defense dice and working out time to play a trigger?
Yeah. So, I mean, I personally never thought that they were needed. I've been watching some TTS games recently, and I think they're needed.
I agree. This is the thing. I agree. I think they are.
I don't want them to. I don't want them to be needed, but I think I don't know. Maybe it's just it feels a bit like maybe like I've sort of like retired from TTS. Now all of a sudden I don't have anything positive to say about it. But when we first started TTS tournaments, right, there was 2 things. One, people, and we tried to stream it, tried to make them popular, tried to make it a big game, tried to grow it in the community, tried to grow the TTS community and the song community in general.
Mhm.
People said, you're streaming games, people will cheat, right? And we were like, why would people cheat? Like, I mean, like what? Get advice from other players? I really genuinely don't think it was happening. I'm pretty sure it wasn't. It wasn't a thing. We were running individual events and people were playing by themselves. They were winning tournaments by themselves. And 2, people were like, TTS is really, really slow. How can you ever play a game? Like, I'm not spending 4 hours playing a game. Except for a couple of people when we first started, it wasn't like that at all. Games lasted. I mean, also TTS was much harder to use back then. It didn't have anywhere near the cool like tools and things to increase the speed at which you play. Right? Like put a unit back where it was, pivot, see its arcs, things like that, all really quickly, all really easy to do now. And yet, I feel like these days, particularly from the TSL, there are huge, like I don't need to like provide evidence, or it is known. It's like doping in weightlifting. Everybody knows that it happens, right? It is well known fact that the majority of the top teams are cheating by playing multiple people giving advice during games, which I think is crazy. Like that is cheating. Like I don't understand how this is going unchecked. And specifically, the games are getting longer and longer and longer, partly because of this cheating, where people are effectively watching the game and they're waiting for advice. They're waiting for people to tell them what to do, and they're waiting for like chat conversations, and they're trying to decide decisions by committee, which is why they take so long. and that takes forever. And just also, there's been this idea that they've seen some people playing really slowly and like really, really methodically, measuring everything. And like bartenders created loads of amazing tools to allow you to measure things more quickly, certain distances more quickly, to increase the speed of the game. And actually, what the effect it's had is people have now decided that they have to measure every single thing at every given time, and they'll measure loads of things. Most people I see play, even when they're playing like casually, they're not even playing tournament games. They make an entire set of moves, move, check a load of positions, check where they'll end up, and then they finally say, okay, so I'm going to activate that unit. And then they send it right back to where it was once they know they've basically played out the entire move, and then they take it again, right? They are not willing to take a move until they know exactly where it will finish. If you did that to me in real life, I'd be like, no, fuck off. Do you know what I mean? Like, you touch, like, I'm not saying we're playing touch move or like, but you pick up a unit. As soon as you touch that tray, I'm going to say, are you activating that unit? And you either say yes or no. If you say no, I'll say, well, what are you doing then? Because you can say to me, oh, can I just check where this unit can get? And I'll be fine with that, right? It has become a standard now on TTS that you play out the entire move before you decide if you're going to do it. And so I just think that the TTS community is like driven itself into a hole of like all these things that people said was bad about TTS have now come true. But a year ago, when they were saying it about TTS, none of it was true. That wasn't the way people were playing. People weren't cheating. They weren't helping each other. And people were like, "Oh, that'll happen. That's just going to happen. How can you believe any of this stuff?" And I was like, "No, that doesn't happen." And now it does. And it's just really like,
Yeah.
and people like fucking NRG2 need to be putting a thing on this. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's part of the reason, that's part of the reason why I wasn't going to do NRG2, because I think that the community should be able to regulate itself, but it can't, it seems. Like, and we're just catering to the lowest common denominator, which is that people have to be told what's fucking acceptable and what's not. And it feels like chess clocks are part of that people have to be told, like, why do people have to be told what's an acceptable amount of time to take their turn in? Because they are taking the piss, like the actual piss. And that's just when I'm like watching a game while I'm trying to paint. I like watch games like every night. If they're being streamed, I'll watch them. And I'm there like 3 hours later, like, how is this game still going on? I've probably gone downstairs, like had a cup of tea, come back upstairs, watched a film on a different monitor, and I'm like, wait, is that game still playing? What the fuck?
I mean, Lockerbie talks about when streaming 4 to 5 hour games. Yeah, trust me, Lockie, I've been there. Me and Carlo have done it. We know you've done it. Other people have done it. I won't go into naming any names. I played a player, and I would come over to my computer, and I won't say that. I mean, sometimes I go into the tank. I think everyone does go into the tank, and they have these moments on a board where you're like, right, I need to think about what I'm doing, and I mean, Carlo, we played on Friday, right? And there was a moment where you must have waited for like 5-10 minutes before you made your move because you were just analysing so many things. You literally sat here quietly, and Carlo was just like looking at the board, looking at his hand, looking at the board, looking at his hand, because he was in a position that was awful for him, and he wanted to try and work out how to save it. Like, do I think Carlo was playing that slowly? No. He was in a horrible position and needed to think about like how he was going to get out of a hole. He went into the tank, he came out, and we played the rest of the game out. I wouldn't have a go
Didn't
at him for
matter. The
that.
whole game was over after 40 minutes
Yeah.
when I resigned on turn 2.
Yeah, it didn't actually matter in the end. But the point is that
40 minutes, 10 of which was one turn.
I don't actually like have a go at him for doing that, because in the situation it kind of like warranted it almost. But I have played players who are like, they're umming and ahhing about their second activation when NCUs haven't been like activated, and I've literally just gone over to my title, and I've literally like I built a jigsaw. I built a jigsaw one night while playing a game of A Song of Ice and Fire. Like,
this is what
what?
Like, this is the thing. This is the thing. Like, I feel like when a player, like, two players are good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like I say, me and Mickey, we genuinely, this game took about 40 minutes to play. Yes, like, and that's setup time as well. But like, players, they're playing, and they'll start, and it'll be like, right, okay, and they think for like 5 minutes, and then they're like, I'll activate this NCU and put it on letters. And it's just like, for fuck's sake, mate. Everybody knows that that was what your opening move was going to be. Like, what was there to think about? Like, what did you have to look at? What did you have to think about? Sometimes there'll be one NCU zone open. Both players will have an NCU left. One NCU. They haven't got any NCUs to pick from. And the person will sit and think about it for ages and then go, I'll activate my NCU and put it on the last zone. It's like, what the fuck were you thinking about? And then their opponent, sometimes I feel like they're just doing it just to like spite them back, will sit there for 5 minutes and then go, I pass with my third NCU. Do you know what I mean? Like like basically like it's this race to the bottom. Like, I'm honestly like, how are you playing so slow? Do you not know the game? Like, you play this game all the time. When me and you know, I do actually think that I made a couple of mistakes in the first round against Mickey the other day, right? But like, it was just like, all right, I open the game. All right, I'll go crowns with Littlefinger. You okay? You go that, and then literally almost at this pace, I'm just like, right, I'll go letters. You, yeah, bang, 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 and like one of those NCU activations was probably wrong, right? But now I remember it, and I'm very specifically know which one was wrong. Next time, it's in my mind. I'll just be like, I mean, take horses earlier, mate. Against free folk, take horses earlier. Take horses earlier.
Don't
right?
take letters before horses.
And I can play at that same pace without making the mistake, because I played at that pace and made a mistake. Then next time, I got it in my mind. People are trying to think through every possible solution in the entire game, and then they make one move. Like, your gut feel, you have to be playing on gut feel. If people aren't playing in that way, then they need to be. Somebody's got to put a clock in front of them and say, you want to analyze everything? You want between every single go for you to go and look through my deck at what possible triggers could trigger off of this? Fine, but you're on the fucking clock. And if we get to an hour and a half, you lose the game. And I just think, like,
what I think would be way better than a death clock necessarily is having like an hour for each player, say an hour and a half for each player, or something like that. We'd have to make an agreed number, but then having grace period, so there's going to be half an hour in the game overall, which is effectively what I would call dead time, right? So what I mean by this is you've got almost like a shared half an hour between you, meaning that if there are moments where triggers are being discussed and things like this, you can click that down. But that would still be timed, and the reason I would still time it is because ultimately, if you've got these moments where you're like, whose actual turn is it, or what's priority, or someone making a decision or not, like, because otherwise you'd be like, I move a unit, hit the clock, it's like, right, I'm activating this unit, hit the clock. Now it's counting your time to decide if you're going to do something. Oh, I hit the clock because I say no, and it's like, well,
yeah,
that seems almost like to the point where it seems almost anal, because now every trigger window would have to have a double hit, which is just ridiculous. But you can have dead time in there, half an hour of dead time, being like, right, a discussion moment of like, I'll pause the clocks for a second, we'll go on the dead time. If you need time to think about whether or not there's going to be activations here, we can do that. And if the dead time run low, what that says is you need to be making decisions faster on triggers.
Yeah.
And that's for both players.
Yeah.
So
I just think, like, I mean, obviously it's not beyond saving or anything like that.
No.
And obviously there are great players on TTS. I'll tell you this, right? I won't say any names because there are actually multiple people who have this problem. If you're going in channels every night saying, "Oh, I'm looking for a game," and nobody's coming to you for a game, it's probably because lots of people have played you before. It's a small community, and they know it was annoying last time they played you, and that you probably have a bad TTS habits that people don't want to play against. If you can't find an opponent, it's because people don't want to play you. I can tell you that I watch games every night. People are playing every night, but they want to play against people who play quick, play nicely, who play enjoyable stuff, you know, like. And so if you're having troubles finding games outside of tournaments, then maybe look internally as much as you look externally.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
It seems a little bit like the community can't properly self-regulate and that means that it has to be tournament organizer regulated, which isn't the answer that I want to be true. I don't want a TO to have to be mandating these things, but it seems like people aren't able to do it themselves.
There are, I mean, I will say from my perspective, I like to play games every now and then. You know, I play against Lockerbie enough on evenings, other players as well when they're up and about. There are players who will put LFG in the chat, and I'll just be like, nah, thanks. There are plenty of great players out there that, you know, I say Lockie, Ben, you know, plenty of players out there who I think are great, and we often watch them chilling on an evening. There's a usual crew, isn't there, in NRG,
Yeah.
who play games every now and then. But yeah, it's anyway. So moving on from NRG, we will wait until the round has finished off. These last couple of games are finished off, and then I will draw the second round. I'll also get in contact with Decipher and a couple of the other players, see if I can get one of those entered in. So that should be tonight, though, that I draw that. There is another tournament that's going on, and this next one, this loads all right. There we go. This is a little bit of a surprise viewing. This is in French, and this is an update.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
Is Mickey gonna butcher some translations for us?
Hooray! Our favourite time of the week. So we've got the French Guerre de Huit Royaumes, the 8 faction tournament that they're doing.
Yeah.
So we've had an update. This is from is it Galantil? Is his
yeah.
Is his Galantil his name on the thing? I don't actually know his real name, but the he's running the event basically. He's coordinating a lot of what the event is, and he's sent us this to actually have a quick look at the stats and things like that of what's going on, and we can see that in first place we have Night's Watch, in second place Targaryen, third place Greyjoy, fourth place the Purple Libre, the Purple Library. The fifth
Where's
place.
Where's average Joe's?
Where's the average Joe's? I think that's called.
Versus Purple Libres.
Oh, we need to do that. Oh. Yeah, I was just. But yes.
I don't actually know how this scores. I'm a little bit confused. I looked at the scoring. It seems to be that everybody so far I've seen factions. So factions go head to head on a given week, and they play 4 games.
Yep.
The first week was random, but from then on, the top Swiss draw player from each faction plays each other, and then you work on down. So there's some there's no pairing mechanism or anything like that, other than just highest rated players play each other down to the bottom, which I think is great. That's that's really good. You know, like that. You know, players play other people of relatively equal skill is the main driving force of Swiss draw. That is the best part of Swiss draw. Anyway, so far I've only ever seen factions go 2 wins, 2 losses, or 3 wins, 1 loss. But as far as I can tell, you get 4 points each when they went 2 and 2, and the result went 10-1 when it was 3 and 1. I don't exactly know how that happens, but Night's Watch, Targaryens, Greyjoy all have 14 points for a win and a draw. And then Free Folk and Stark have 2 draws. And then, and Baratheons.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lannisters have a draw and a loss, and neutrals have 2 losses. There are some interesting results in there when you get down to it, but no surprise that Night's Watch, Targaryens, and Greyjoys are up there.
Yeah, I mean, Greyjoys have always been, even before the Lannister freefall of the recent weeks, Greyjoys have always been this kind of like boogeyman randomly of like they were able to compete in that kind of like, I'm going to call it second tier almost. If you assume that Night's Watch and to some extent Targaryen are top tier. And then you've got the second tier, which, as we were speaking about earlier, it was Greyjoys and Lannisters for a long time, and Free Folk were kind of like edging it out underneath that. deciding if they were being second or third tier, and I think they very much are now a second tier faction. And yeah, and it plays out roughly equivalent. Greyjoy's obviously leaking into the top there,
Yeah.
and then you've got the Free Folk, which are easily, looking at that, they are one of the they are the highest performing faction in that second bracket in this event, particularly,
Yeah.
but not by much. Stark and Baratheon putting in good work as well, which is interesting, and then Lannister, obviously. I do think it's somewhat down to the change in Lannister. I think it's the builds, I'll be honest with you. We talked about the very bad internal balance in Lannister.
So it's worth mentioning in this tournament, one of the reason why it's being run through this spreadsheet and not on stats. So all of these results are submitted to stats, but what's specific about the tournament and the reason why, I mean, we talked about it with Gal and Phil. The reason why it's done through challenges is that each faction will play 7 games. Sorry, each player will play 7 games, and they must pick 4 lists, not 2. And the site isn't really set up for that. You must pick 4 lists, each with a different commander, and you can only play each list twice. So I do think that really plays against Lannisters, as we were talking about, because their internal balance is shot to hell.
Yes.
They have some very good ones and they have some very bad ones. And I think that that's not doing well for them. One of the most interesting results, or like it's a small bit of data. It's only 4 results, but Greyjoys managed to draw 2-2 with the Night's Watch in week 1. It's a really big start for them, and not something that I'd be able to predict. I think that Targaryens will be interesting.
I think it.
Most of their results will have to not be Mother of Dragons. How many dragons they include in the rest of their lists will be interesting to look at later on when we get more results, when we start to see them all play out. I think that it's shaping up into where we would expect it to be, but there are some surprising results in there. And there just really are some really strong players in amongst this. Some names that we know from international TTS tournaments playing not the strongest factions, playing the faction that they love the most, and really helping to prop it up.
I will say though, talking about like Night's Watch, you start taking away the likes of Offal from them, because they can't play it. They played it last week, or John. They can't play John and Offal every week. They're forced to playing these lower factions, and maybe some of the players in there, or lower commanders, I should say. Maybe the players just thought, sod it, it's Greyjoys. We won't run Offal. We won't run John into Greyjoys. Maybe we can run the more competitive stuff to leave those options available for the Targ games.
True.
And actually, immediately when doing that, it makes Greyjoys will be like, yeah, okay, it's Night's Watch. We have to run our best stuff. But maybe the best Greyjoy stuff against the middle tier Night's Watch stuff is actually a fairly balanced matchup.
Yeah, the Night's Watch have, without a doubt, the least internally balanced commander selection. They have pretty good internal balance in their terms of their units, but their commanders vary wildly in power. Like Offal, so clearly number 1. John is such a clear standout 2. And then it's a long, long way to 3, right? Neutrals are in there as considerations. Jayor's a really hard pick because his NCU is so good. Alistair is doing so badly. He is actually like individually managing to tank the faction practically. And Donal, like, he has some plays, but like it's really counter to the way the rest of Night's Watch is doing. So I do think that it's an interesting way to force them out of their meta picks. And it'll be interesting to see how it ends up. I really, it'll be still quite a few weeks left. We're into round 3 of 7. So we'll check back again in a few weeks' time, see how things are getting on.
Do you recommend, guys, go and check out? I know it's in French, but go and check out some of the French streams. They do stream games quite a lot. I think they've got one tonight. I think.
Yeah.
So go check it out. It's really good.
I'll check with Galanthil what he wants shared or not shared. I think there's a public thing that people can share and look at, and that includes all the results. And specifically, it even includes links to any VODs that they have of those games. And quite a lot of the games are recorded. Quite a lot of the games are streamed. French community, super, super tightly knit, super, like involved in terms of their own tournaments, just not as kind of like open and
they don't transmit it to
they don't participate that much with the rest of Europe and with the rest of the world because they offer such a strong tournament scene to themselves.
Yeah, they don't transmit it very well outside of the French scene, which is a massive shame because I actually think there's some players in the French scene who are very good, and there's definitely some events and things that they run that is really good. I mean, you got to give kudos to the French scene. They're the ones who ran Master of Westeros, which is still to this point the largest ever event that we're aware of that's happened in the world. There may be events in like China or Asia somewhere, but good luck finding out about them.
Really doubt it. Yeah, I really doubt it.
So, yes, so that's that. We've touched on that just very quickly. There are some other things. Most of the events that are on the site are things that we've already talked about before. There have been a couple of little things that have popped up. We won't spend a lot of time on many of them. We were going to stop by one, weren't we, though? So, there was a tournament in Russia that ran, kind of randomly out of the blue. That was actually a couple of weeks ago, but I don't think it was on the site until recently.
No, it was.
Was it?
Yeah. I haven't closed any tournaments this week.
Right. Okay.
This was won by.
That was Nordric. No, we did look at that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
There we go. It was a Targaryen win. No Night's Watch entered.
Yeah. So yeah, that's running where we've got the. The Swindon game. Swindon meetup is happening this weekend, I believe. If you're in and around Swindon area in the UK, Ben's been getting people go down. So try and get down to that end if you can. I know Scadman and the likes are going down to go and meet up and play some games. Just friendlies. All the results are going to be on the site as if it was a tournament. But yeah, it's just going to be a friendly event. That's all it is, just a meet up. We've got the where is it? The Highlander Tournament. There it is. That's what we're going to look at. So the Highlander Tournament is now closed. Well, locked, if you will. Games are underway. They ended up getting 18 players, which is healthy. Healthy number of players.
There's a few Baratheons.
There's a lot of Baratheons at the top. Bloody hell, yeah. So 4 Baratheon players by the looks of it. Good mix. Not very many Night's Watch. 2 Night's Watch. Yeah.
I don't know if I don't think it had any actual Night's Watch restrictions, right?
No.
It just
the Highlander.
It just specifically just one of anything. That means that you can't take double crossbows, you can't take double watch captain. So and you can't spam conscripts. So that's a problem. Night's Watch therefore becoming very unpopular. There's a few Lannisters. Again, I think that not being able to spam poor fellows is an issue for them. Baratheons, like I say, I do think do reasonably well out of the Highlander because the lists they're putting together is a one of everything anyway. They don't have anything which spams particularly well. And I would say I'd be pretty interested to see how things end up here. It's definitely a faction skew, which isn't normal to kind of like a normal unrestricted kind of event.
There's only one neutral propped up by Lockerbie, so massive shout out to Lockie. But there's no free folk as well at all, which makes me kind of sad inside. I should have entered. I should have entered and ran some free folk meme lists. I've got some memes.
Could have.
It's got
a good international entry. It's a German run event, so it's got a number of well-known German players. But there's a good scattering of plenty of top players from everywhere.
He's back. He's back on the international scene with a vengeance, playing in literally any and every event. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Right, so yes, we'll check on that. Obviously, there's only one game been played, and I think this means that Lannisters are the best faction in the game, I think. Anyway. Friendlies in Swindon coming up. Are we going to Liverpool this weekend?
I am.
Am I? There's a question.
I mean, that's a weird question, Mickey.
Hey,
You
Carlo.
hadn't mentioned anything. I might see you there.
Am I going to this event this weekend, Carlo? Probably.
uh,
I'll have to check that out.
uh,
I'll have to check that out.
you'll have to decide that one for yourself, Mickey. I'll be there. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. I mean, I almost thought I was going to be able to turn up here today and say I'm super looking forward to going to this event because the last time I lost was to somebody at Just Play, and then I got smashed loads of times on Friday. So that's entirely not true. But I am looking to avenge a loss which I took last time I casually turned up at Just Play. I'm super looking forward to it because I know that they have some really strong players there. They have a good close knit group, and it'll be a really good event. So, I tried to get a painted army of something else, but I would be taking quite a different Lannister army than the one I took to Sterling. This is unrestricted, so I will be bringing all the exciting new stuff, which I wasn't able to take to Sterling.
I will say though, bit disappointed in you, Carlo, because I distinctly remember we've got it on video that you said, "Oh, I've already won a tournament with Lannisters, so now I'm going to do it with a different faction."
Yeah,
You're not taking Baratheons.
but I also said I'm only playing with 100% painted models this edition. So the two things
You've
clash
got a fully
against each
painted
other.
Baratheon, haven't you?
No, I have.
I think you've
managed
got
to
40
paint-
points of painted Baratheons.
I have 40 points. A single army build of Baratheons. Of units that got massively nerfed in 2021.
You can do it.
Like,
it's just it would be miserable.
I think a lot of myself as a player, but being able to win with a very suboptimal Baratheon build is not. I don't think I'm that crazy good.
No, he's not. Anyway, yeah. So hopefully that I'll talk to you after we finish about that one. We've also had Dora's War, which came up. This was the other day. As this came up, is it Taiwan?
Yeah.
Is that right?
8-player event in Taiwan, not this weekend, but the weekend after.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
I'd read it.
Hopefully, we'll see some results coming out of Asia.
Yeah. People we've never heard of on using the site. Jesus.
Using that shite.
But yeah, cool, awesome. Like,
yeah,
anyone Taiwanese watching?
Like, that one was absolutely awesome. Honestly, the little red thing pinged up on the map, and I was like, "Is that Singapore?" And I was like, "No." Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. And then we've got Imps Gaming. We've got Sunday Slaughters Gamers Haven. That's event's coming up at the end of the month as well. The Fabricators Forge Highlander event as well. So they're running a similar event at Fabricators Forge. Obviously, the guys over there ran an event not too recently, and they liked the idea that Highlander was bringing. I think the scene, and so they ran with it as well. I think that's brilliant. We've got Carl Kirsten's North California event going up as well. He's got a couple of rules and things of like bans and stuff. We talked about it last week. Italian national event still going on. There's a couple of German events, another French event as well. Well, technically French Canada.
French Canada in Montreal. Yeah, super excited to see a Canadian event go up. That one just appeared this week.
And then we've got the other ones, which are all the ones that have been booked in for a long time: the Grand Tournament, the Scottish GT, and the Captain Con events happening in Richmond, USA. So we were going to do this earlier, Carlo.
Yeah.
And then we
totally
failed dramatically. But the London GT, we have the pleasure of being able to announce today, right now, the first 3 game modes in order, right? In order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This will actually be round 1, 2, and 3 on the Saturday of the 6-round event. We talked about it for a while, me, Leak Teddy, about like whether or not we would do random rounds, whether or not we would choose them on the day, stuff like that. So obviously it's a 6-round event. There are 9 competitive game modes. While I don't like to say that certain modes are unplayable, there was one specific mode which is considered in person to be an absolute nightmare, and that is Here We Stand, right? Because measuring out table quarters in person determining whether or not a unit is in one arc or another. And just the way it scores all adds huge time to the game mode. And we just talked for ages about how long people are taking to play, whether or not time's an issue. And to make that a very specific game mode, which we feel takes longer than the others, I don't think that it's necessarily a bad game mode. I think that it's not a good tournament. It has issues when it comes to an in-person tournament. Actually, funnily enough, TTS gets around it because it's very easy to measure and observe on TTS.
We talked about this, didn't we, Carlo? Because we played it, and it was, to put it bluntly, it was carnage. The game was carnage, and it very quickly descended into chaotic, and to the point where me and Carlo, I think we talked about it briefly, Carlo came away with the win, and like I was saying to Carlo, like, how do you think? Because I can't see how I could play this game much differently. I didn't really understand how to make the game any different, and I think Carlo's response was basically like, I have no idea. Like, there's no analysis able to be done, really.
Yeah, it feels like a training game, is in that it creates a ton of interesting situations, which are interesting decision points, and they are interesting tactically, but it's not one game. It's like 2-3 games that all got smashed together. In some ways, it's really brilliant because it creates more decision points. You have as many decision points and chances to win and lose the game as you do normally in 2 to 3 games, but it can take as long as 2 to 3 games to play out. Units constantly respawning, units not dwindling as the rounds go on, makes the rounds take longer and longer and longer because, players are now, they know that they're having to calculate like exactly who will win a certain quarter and what that will do to the result and stuff like that. And they can predict like, oh, I must do this to not lose and stuff like that. And it takes a while to think those things through. That's not people just being really slow players. They do actually, like, you do sort of need to think through those things, right? So anyway, I personally particularly feel strongly that if you're going to play it in a tournament, you have to really account for it. And you could talk about, it would have to be like, I think it has to be a longer time. And specifically, you have to go out, I think, and you have to tape out the table quarters
100%.
on every single table. Right? And then that means that every table has to have the table quarters taped on it for pretty much the entire event. And I think that's just kind of stupid just to include this one mode.
You could the only way you could do it, in my opinion, if you were going to do it, is you do it at the first event on a particular day. So you'd measure it out like the day before, or the first thing you do when you got there. You'd measure it all out. Then at the end of round one, people could take the tape off and be like, right, that's done, that's out of the way. That, in my opinion, or you could do that at the Saturday morning game or a Sunday morning game or a 2-day event, whatever. Yeah. That's the only way you could ever include that game mode. Personally, I believe. Yeah. Physically.
And so it just didn't seem worth it, so then it felt like, well, we're not going to include that mode. That means that we're picking 6 of 8. And suddenly it's like, well, if we're not going to include that, shall we just like choose 2 more, which we're apprehensive about, and get rid of them? We're still actually discussing between 3 modes, which 2 we're going to get rid of. We have 5 definites, and we will announce the 3 that will be on the first day. Do you have them, Mickey?
I do have them up, yeah. So hopefully this is the right order. Round 1 of the London Grand Tournament is going to be Owned and Ready. The best game mode. Genuinely, I think this is the best game mode.
I thought it'd be a great start. So because, like I say, because we've decided that we're going to pick the 6 game modes, and we decided that they're not going to be random, because we also think that we would like the tournament to end on very reliable, repeatable game modes. We would like them to be the top tables, the final game modes, the tournament to be decided. Not that a tournament isn't decided in every game. You still have to win every game to win a tournament. But when we get to crunch time, we would like specific tournaments to be there. Personally, I don't like to have any information beforehand that I don't provide to the players. I don't want people to ever think that, so for example, that I sneakily told Mickey what the game modes were because I knew what they were, right? So I think that if I know something as a TO, I should let the players know. So anyway, I decided that we're actually going to curate the tournament, which is that it's going to start with a big bang. It's going to start with Honed and Ready. I think it's an amazing game mode. It's a really good start. It's one of my favorites. And specifically, don't forget to bring your walls. Must bring walls to the tournament. They are a requirement to bring your own terrain. I can provide a lot, but I can't provide 32 sets of walls.
I think you can provide a third of that, though. Maybe even more.
I probably can provide. Yeah, I can probably provide.
There are 3 walls per starter
10
set.
sets of walls.
You've probably got, no word of a lie, you've probably got like 11 starters in your house, probably close to that. So you could probably provide 33 walls, which is enough for 16 tables. You could do half the tournament. That's sad. You're sad. No. So Honed and Ready.
Yeah. Just to aside to Bob. Yeah, we have 31 signed up on the site, which is still annoying. We have 61 tickets sold. It is a 64-person tournament, just specifically, right? Because there's one of the reasons why we're announcing the modes, right? Guys, there's like 2 months left. There are 2, I think, tickets left. We would really like to sell them. We want it to be a full 64-person event. If you can, if you're on the fence, there is no waiting around. They will sell. Please just go and buy them. Once we have all 64, we can start to do more things. We were going to wait to announce the game modes until once we had 64, but it's dragging on a little bit. Please go buy the last couple of events. It will be a very big, very good event. It'll be awesome. I'll be there.
Mm-hmm. Or the worst thing you can do is Carlo will come in and disguise and play as Carlos, and he'll win the event. He'll win the event. Anyway, game mode number 2. So Honed and Ready is Saturday. Game number 1.
Yeah.
Game number 2 on Saturday. Peace of Crows. The classic. It's a classic. It's been around. It got changed. Remember when it used to be mental and just.
Remember when it was crap. Remember when it was a NP. Remember when it was the Fire and Blood equivalent NPE of like, I'm just gonna sit in my deployment zone.
It was if you were in short range of a corpse pile, you took a minus. You took a panic test. Back when panic was like you took how much you failed, the damage.
Yeah.
And you took a panic test with a minus equal to the round number.
Yeah.
You're to the end of the game,
round
take a
5,
minus.
You took a -5. Was it a panic check or was it a morale test?
I think
forget.
It was a panic.
It was either morale or panic. But if you failed, you became worth 1 more VP.
Oh,
so
that
you
was
just
it. Yeah.
continuously became worth more.
Yeah,
and
it was
suddenly
morale.
just like 1 unit was just like worth 5 VPs and you killed it to win the game.
Yeah.
Basically, there was no incentive to walk towards the middle of the board at all, which they sort of learned from. They fixed that game mode and then they forgot to learn from it in Fire and Blood, where there's still no incentive to walk towards the middle of the board.
Yeah. Which is problematic.
But Modern Feast is actually very interesting. I think it's a really good game mode. I love that it almost has a built-in comeback mechanic in that losing units isn't necessarily a huge negative because you place the corpse pile. So losing the first unit is often like the snowball effect, which starts to lose you the game in terms of the fight. Being able to use it for positional control and VP control is a nice way that the game mode counters like the issues of the game.
Yep, definitely, 100%. Okay then. So, third game mode. This is the last game on Saturday.
Yeah.
Clash of Kings, which is an almost controversial pick, I think, with the old respawning commanders and things. But now that the FAQ come out, it's kind of fixed that. Which is, I think, is
now that the FAQs come out. This was one of the ones which was maybe in discussion like before the FAQ came out. The FAQs come out. It's cleaned up a lot of stuff about what is and isn't considered a commander unit, what is and isn't a commander in terms of like moving attachments and stuff like that. So I think that's good. It's the third mode on the Saturday, because there's a small chance that I may, no promises, I may let this game overrun if people want. And it may be one of the slightly longer game modes because of the respawning aspect. So, we'll see. But again, like I say, I'm almost curating this as an event. This was the one I was once I got rid of Here We Stand, this was the one I was concerned about in terms of time. So that's why it's the third event, the last one of the day. Hopefully people just want to go and get over to the bar, start socializing, doing all that kind of stuff. But it will be a very leisurely pace to this tournament, hopefully. Good 2-hour-long rounds plus 15-minute changeover between rounds. I think that it'll be a great event on the Saturday. I'm really happy with those 3 game modes, and I think that they give a really wide variety of things that you need to consider in your list building, in the way that you build your list, in the way that you approach a game mode, and hopefully people won't be too obsessed with just getting tabled by Night's Watch.
Yeah. I will say as well, with Clash of Kings coming in at round 3, and you talk about the possibility of giving potential extra time if possible, and leaving that door open rather than just assuming it's closed. I really like that. I've always said that although I like to have time limits on games, not because I think games need time limits, but actually the other way around is that I want to play games, and sometimes you need a time limit to make sure you can get games in, right? That's the problem.
Yeah.
But and I'll go back to the event that we played in Durham. Okay, I came down on a particular I lost that particular game, but I never enjoy winning or losing on time. Because if a game is very close, you can feel like this wasn't really resolved, and we've had to just. It almost feels like you've had to abandon it. And I think you should always, like you say, Carlo, you should never really resign from a game unless it is completely pointless. And I do mean completely. I personally believe that you should always try and resolve a game, and if that means spending an extra 10 minutes going through the motions of resolving it, I think that's better than just saying, look, 2 hours, that's it, stop. Because I understand it from a tournament perspective. You can't not do that in a tournament. You need to. But it is still very annoying. And there's nothing worse than a game which you either win or lose just because you ran out of time to play it. But yeah, so there we go. There's the 3 game modes for day 1 of the London GT. We need to get crowdfund a plane ticket to get Chris Tran over and film some games.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
There may be, depending on what happens between now and then, it depends on a couple of other
I have no idea
factors.
what Mickey's about to claim now.
No. There may
this would be a classic Mickey.
No. There may be opportunity for us to set up some, not necessarily videoing of games, but potential videoing of, or recording, or live streaming either the top table, or maybe if we're super lucky, the top 2. I doubt we'll be able to do 2.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what we won't know until really close to the time. What we'll have access to and availability of in terms of internet. I'm sure we will be able to set up like videoing to post release. But it would be really nice to be able to get people more involved on the day and be able to stream directly out to people.
Yeah, it is something that I've not looked at hugely, but was always intending to help out like Darryl and things with. Sorting out, because between us we've got enough kit to do it. It's not the problem of not having the stuff. The problem is getting it down and, more importantly, getting it set up appropriately for that. But yeah,
Weasel says that the FAQ doesn't answer things for Clash of Kings. So
yeah, but Weasel's been known to be wrong.
I might have to double check it. But I thought it had. I thought it had defined what was a commander unit if, say, for example, a commander moves from one to another, and I thought it had defined what a commander was if a commander, again, an attachment moves from one to another. So we're talking about the issues of free folks, bullshit move around, regroup and reform. And also things like Renly 2's, mysterious return kind of stuff.
I know that one of the games has just finished that we were waiting on. I don't know if they've put it into stats just yet. They haven't put it into stats just yet. But I do believe that one of the games that we were waiting on has now finished. So for NRG, this is. So we'll check on that hopefully soon. But there was something that Groose obviously pointed out, which we do need to do, and I will go and do it now. We need to draw the second game mode, don't we? And I said we'd do them live on stream.
Oh, right.
So, it's, yeah, we'll do it there. What game mode did we just have? We had Dance of Dragons, right?
I
I
don't know. I
think we
play
just
it.
had Dance of Dragons. I know you didn't play it. You've done nothing to do with it. Do we play Dance of Dragons? Pretty sure we had. Yeah, Dance of Dragons. Yep. So Dance of Dragons. The game mode is going to be not Dance of Dragons.
Brett got tabled.
Did he?
He's not the only Night's Watch player to lose this round.
To be fair, that was a Night's Watch mirror.
Claw did lose, and he was in a Night's Watch mirror, so there was always going to be one Night's Watch loser this round. Somebody else did lose with Night's Watch. They mostly were. But, yeah.
Dance of Dragons. Gone. I didn't think I took out any of the other game modes. I can't remember. So, we'll quickly switch this on. Hey, there we go. A second. Hey! So, we're on to drawing the game mode. Carlo, what would you like to see? Just have dance. What would you like to see come up?
I'd love Clash, and then Mickey has to deal with the FAQ of of what happens when all the questions come up, and then I can just steal it for the GT, because it turns out that maybe it didn't get as FAQ'd as I thought it would. It would be really nice to see Clash happen before the GT, so that I can get all the questions out of the way. It is by far you'll never be able to pre-guess all the questions that are going to come up. So I'd love to see something happen.
Sure. Let's go. We've got Winds of Winter. Oh, love it. I love me some secret missions. Ho ho ho. I love me some secret missions. You like the secret missions as well, don't you, Carlo?
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
When I was talking about the comeback mechanics of Feast, Winds specifically also has, and the secret mission deck has built into it those comeback mechanics of must be behind but steal first turn and gain a VP. I think that's a brilliant objective, a brilliant secret mission for them to have put in. And if I'm not wrong, Winds says that it's always in your hand, right?
Yeah.
Winds always uses it. It's always available. And I think brings a real good dynamic to the game. I do think that the best thing they can do with game modes is create things that help kind of offset some of the minor issues that the game has built into it, just like its functional way that it's played.
So, we'll play Winds of Winter. There will probably be some questions about it. Any questions, you know where to stick them in the NRG Discord. I'll try and resolve as many as I can over the next couple of days. The round will be drawn soon. Just waiting on the one game result, and as I said, potential inclusion of a 30-second player to fill in that gap. And yeah, hopefully everyone has an enjoyable week. Everyone gets to play some lovely games. And yeah, I think, Carlo, that ends where we're at today.
Yeah, pretty much. Just a big shout out to Bob and the Sunday Slaughter Gamers Haven tournament. It is actually looking really good. I'm really excited to see what happens. There are it's pretty much a who's who of currently is at the top of the US rankings. And some of those players are new to me, new to the site in terms of like me being aware of them. They're not necessarily big names on TTS. So I'm really looking forward to seeing them throw down with some of the well-known players. David Doll, Hammer, he's got a really great ranking at the moment, I think. OJ Bill.
Oh, he's back. He's back.
Wonder if he's playing neutrals. I hope he is. But Adam Slutsky, Schmuckum, is also currently a very high-rated player. And that's, Sunday Slaughter, as much as he claims to be not the best player, he is a very, very highly rated player. I'm not sure. Is Bob entered himself? I think he is. Yeah, I think Bob
Yeah, Bob's
entered.
entered. Yeah.
And obviously we've talked quite a bit about like the list bans and stuff like that, the list restrictions, but it will be interesting to see what the outcome of that is. I'm very interesting to see these players throw down in person. It's been a long time for a lot of these players. And it's really big. 26 players in person. That's the biggest event that we've had yet far since COVID, as far as I know. That's bigger than, Gen Con has been for the past couple of years. Bigger than that's almost as big as like I know there's going to be I believe there's going to be a lot of very highly rated players, a lot of big names making big trips for LVO, but it's about the same size as LVO. So this is becoming an important big event on the calendar, and it's really soon, really soon. It's like in 3 weeks. So yeah.
No, I'm stoked. I'm gonna see how that one
Yeah.
goes out. Different world. Maybe that would have been worth going over to. Also, massive shout out to a guy called Rex Racer. That's just an awesome name. We know about Rusty Glass, and now we've got Rex Racer as well.
Yeah.
These awesome Americans are just with absolutely epic names coming out of the woodwork. Absolutely love it. All right then, guys. Thank you very much for joining us yet again. We went on a rant about ratings, and then obviously talk about tournaments and talk about all the various cool things that are coming up. Honestly, check the site, check out all the events coming up, because there will probably be an event near you. And if there isn't an event near you, why don't you run an event near you on the site so you can get players involved in your communities as well. Thanks a lot for everyone for tuning in yet again, and I guess we'll see you on Monday.
See you next week.
See you later. Ready, aim, release! Anyone see my mammoth?